Hello, my name is Timothy Napson. I'm a volunteer on the Oral History Project. Can you please introduce yourself and the connection you have to this church building?
Yes, of course. My name's Karen Heverin. I work for Historic England as a Heritage at Risk building surveyor, and my connection to this church is that when it was asked to be considered for putting on the Heritage at Risk register, I came out and had a look at it and met the Reverend here then.
Okay, so what does Historic England really do?
Historic England is a public body that looks at the heritage environment, the historic environment, and maintaining that, protecting it and keeping it for future generations. So there's lots of different areas that we look at. There's the listing side, which is protecting the buildings, but there's also doing research on buildings and various other aspects of it that we look at to protect that historic environment.
Okay, so what criteria do you use to grade a building that's historically important?
There's definitely several things that we look at. So when you're looking at listing a building or a structure, you're looking at the architectural importance of it and also the historic importance. So it could be architecturally interesting for its decoration or for the architect who designed it or the design that they used, but it could also be important from a historic point of view. So it could have been used by somebody a particular interest or be particularly important for an event that happened at the time. So there's lots of different reasons why something can be listed.
Okay, so is the public involved in the grading process, or is it only Historic England that decides which buildings are graded?
The public can nominate buildings for listing, so they're highly involved, and frequently they do. So there's a process on our website where people can put buildings forward, and also they can comment on buildings as well. But it's our listing team. We have a team of people who look at buildings, go out and look at them, go into the history of them, go and research them, and then put forward a report. And it's the government who makes a decision whether buildings go onto the statutory list or not. So it's the government who makes the final decision.
Yeah, so can you please give me a few examples of important people in Liverpool or out of Liverpool whose buildings were listed?
I think the one that I find the most interesting is the Beatles, the Paul McCartney's and John Lennon's houses from when they were younger. So they're fairly ordinary houses that people would live in, but because of their status and their particular, incredible what they've given to the music industry, I think they have been listed. So it was the fact that they lived there rather than the actual building being, a massive, gorgeous palace or anything. It was just that they were there. So
your organisation graded this church grade 2 in 1975. Can you please explain to me the grading process and why this church was graded grade 2?
The grading process is for buildings but also structures. So things that go on the list are not just buildings. It can be, we've got some very unusual things like a roller coaster or farms or whatever. There are lots of variety of buildings, and they are considered for the level of interest. So they're graded grade 1, grade 2 star and grade 2. So grade 1 is the very top. That's the just under 3% of the listed all the listed buildings and structures are grade 1, and they are the top ones that are the most interest, such as in Liverpool the Anglican Cathedral is grade 1 listed, so we have them close by. Grade 2 star is the next level down, so that's more than special interest, and that's usually about 5 to 6% of the whole number of grade listed buildings and structures. And a couple that are in Liverpool that are interesting are the Philharmonic Hall, which is not that old, 1930s, but really beautiful design, especially inside if you get to go and look at that. And also there's the other cathedral, the Roman Catholic Cathedral, which is a more modern building, but that's also grade 2 star listed. And then the majority of listed buildings are the grade 2s, and that is this church that we're in at the moment, also the library that's next door. Also, unusually, I was looking, and the entrance to the Mersey Tunnel is grade 2 listed, so there's such a variety of buildings. But yes, this one was graded at grade 2 because it's of special interest throughout the country.
Okay, so how will you describe this church building to someone who's never seen it before?
Well, it's beautiful and it's got some incredible details. It's sort of an Italian Romanesque design, it's got this big tower, the big square tower, which is extremely prominent along Kensington, and I think that's sort of reminiscent of some of the churches that you see in Italy, but also it's got incredible details within it and on the outside, the brickwork, all the different colours that there are and the different detailing, and also one of the points that I really like about it is the granite columns that you have as you go down the church, the details that you've got at the top of that, the capitals, all different, all carved, beautiful, and I just find the craftsmanship that was used on the church is really striking.
So in 2022, you added this church to your at-risk register. Why was that necessary, and why did it take 48 years to happen after the building was graded in 1975?
Not all buildings go on the at-risk register, thank goodness. It's a relatively small number goes on the at-risk register, and it's a recognition that there are problems with the building or a structure, and there's a need to address those. And it's sort of an acknowledgement that that's happening and draws attention to it. So it allows people to see that the building is, in need of some attention, and it allows it to be seen in that respect against other buildings. So perhaps you have got this brilliant project looking at the oral histories of the building and giving funding for that, and it allows people to see that there is a need for that.
What are the rights and obligations of someone who owns a private building like this church that your organisation decides is historically important to the heritage of the company?
Yeah, so when something is listed, it has a level of protection which other buildings don't have. So if you wanted to make changes to this building that affected the architectural or the historic character, then there's a need to go through the listed building consent process. So that's to apply to the council and to get permission to do whatever works there are. So there's a level of protection there to make sure that any alterations or changes that want to be made keep the character of the building.
Are there any consequences for owners of private buildings that are graded who eventually decide to demolish it and then rebuild on the land?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unusual thing for listed buildings to be demolished because they have been identified as of importance, for the future generations, for that heritage to be kept. So there is a process, and it's part of that listed building consent process to assess that. It is a criminal offence to do works to listed buildings without consent. So it's very important to go through that listed building consent process. But obviously, demolition is a final solution to it. You've got no building left, and you can't see its impact going forward then. So it's a very high test, and there's got to be a lot of justification to get to that point.
So this building was built for £10,000 in 1870. Approximately how much do you think it will cost now?
Oh goodness, I would be thinking between, well, you could be going up to £1 million, and also, I think one of the interesting things is, and one of the things that Historic England is working on, is increasing the skills, because it's not just getting the fabric of the building and getting the materials that you need, but it's also having the people who can actually build as they did then, and use the skills to carve the stone, use the skills to create the stained glass windows. All those skills are really really special and quite difficult to find now. So there's quite a lot of investment going on from Historic England and others to try and build those skills up again so that people can do this kind of work, because you've got some amazing details in here, and we'd want to make sure that going forward, if you were to want to build this church again, somebody would be able to do that kind of detail as well.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.